within this white paper. But let's go over to Central Lobby in the Houses of Parliament, because we can speak to David Jones. He's a Brexit-supporting former minister. Welcome to the programme, David. So the white paper, we've been discussing it here in the studio. It's going to be published in a couple of hours. Are you excited or are you dreading it?
No, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's important now that we have clarity. We've been waiting a long time for this white paper, and indeed it looks as if this is the second version of the white paper that was originally produced. So I think it's important we see it. Of course, we have had an inkling of what's likely to be in it in the communiqué that was issued after the Chequers summit last week. So I think we know the general direction of travel.
Right. And as you say, we haven't seen all the detail, but we do know that under this plan we'll take EU rules on goods and agricultural products. There'll be some role for the European Court of Justice, even if it's indirect, and there will be a mobility framework between us, just talking about that, Labour movement, and the EU. How far is that from the kind of deal that you had envisaged?
Well, we were told repeatedly, and of course the Prime Minister herself in two important speeches at Lancaster House and the Mansion House did effectively draw red lines, which is no membership of the single market or the customs union, and no jurisdiction for the European Court of Justice. And it does look, if the Chequers communiqué is anything to go by, that there's going to be some blurring of those red lines, and that is going to be a matter of some concern.
Right. How concerned are you?
Well, I'm extremely concerned because the country voted to leave the European Union, and leaving the European Union means no longer being part of the apparatus of the European Union, including Single Market Customs Union and European Court of Justice. And I would be extremely concerned if we were not to get anything much less than that.
The Prime Minister may not be worried about your concern, with all due respect, or the concern of some of your colleagues. The Brexit Secretary has said today critics of this deal should stop carping and come up with some credible alternatives. What's the credible alternative, David?
Well, hang on, I haven't seen the deal yet. In fact, there is no deal. I haven't even seen the proposals for the deal, and I'm not carping about it because I haven't got anything to carp about, because we haven't seen anything yet. All that we're asking for, I think, people who are supporters of Brexit, is that there should be what the country voted for, which is a departure from the European Union. And I think in terms of what the alternatives are, I think a good starting place would be a Canada-style free trade agreement, which the European Union has already said we can have. There would be some negotiation quite naturally, but I think that that would be a better starting place than what we appear we'll be seeing later on today.
I mean, critics of that would say that doesn't solve the issue with the border in Northern Ireland. And also, now, David, can you imagine or envisage the Prime Minister being able to go back to either Parliament or the EU with a different proposal to the one that she is releasing this morning? That just wouldn't be credible, would it?
Well, I think, you know, we've got to regard this as initiating a debate within the Conservative Party, and believe me, there is a debate going on at the moment. And I think that the Prime Minister really does have to recognise that there is a great feeling on the side of the pro-Brexit part of the party that this may not be what they want, and she does have to discuss these things.
Discuss, and if she doesn't change her policy, what then?
Well, I'm not going to go into that, because I do believe that we do need this debate first.
Right.
This document today is a good starting point, and I've no doubt it's going to be pored over by people from all over the party, as well as, of course, the wider country.
How split is the party now, do you think?
Well, Europe has always been a fault line within the Conservative Party, and I think that so far we've managed to hold together pretty well. We got the notification of withdrawal bill through with an enormous majority, and only a couple of weeks ago we saw the withdrawal bill go through. And I think that if the party does discuss these things and come to an accommodation, we can go forward.
Right. I mean, listening to some of your colleagues today, Marcus Fish, the Conservative MP, has tweeted, "Downing Street will give us Corbyn unless they change, and change now." Do you agree with him?
I think that the sort of sentiments that Marcus has just expressed is a really good reason for the government to start talking to the parliamentary party.
But I mean, you cannot really change the policy and the proposal that's been put forward unless you change the leader, can you?
Well, I don't think that that's at all right. I think what we have in Theresa May is a very resilient Prime Minister who has delivered a lot of the Brexit agenda so far. And I've never regarded her as a person who you can't discuss things with. And I think that she, when she sees that there is a strong body of opinion within the party that has concerns, will want to discuss these things with us.
Right, take us through what's going to happen on Monday next week when the customs bill, which is a very important part of the whole Brexit legislation, comes back into the Commons. You are supporting some amendments to that bill.
I supported one of the amendments, which is to do with the customs union, and in fact the amendment that I've signed is supportive of the government's position so far. In fact, I asked the Prime Minister on the floor of the House only last week whether we'd be in the customs union and whether a combined customs territory meant that we'd be in the customs union. She said no, it's a different thing. We would not be in the customs union, and the amendment I've put down actually requires that if there is any suggestion that we should go into the customs union, there would have to be primary legislation. So that is supportive of the government's position as it's enunciated it so far.
Right, and so you're hoping that's obviously going to get through on Monday.
So.
Pardon?
I would hope so.
And what about the plan as it stands, the Chequers plan? Do you think that's got enough support in Parliament to get through?
Well, I would think that the government has got to understand that the role of an opposition is to oppose, and that oppositions frequently will take opportunities to try to bring down the government. So I think that that's an important part of the arithmetic that we have to consider at the moment.
Is it acceptable to you in the way he's just explained it, James Cleverly? David?
No, I think we do have to look at the detail. At the moment, we're all speculating as to what's going to be in this white paper. There's going to be a lot of detail in it, and I think that, frankly, we need to study that.
Yeah, but you've already said you don't sign up to the customs proposal as it is. You are not happy with this idea of collecting the tariffs on behalf of the EU unless it's reciprocal.
Well, that wasn't actually my amendment, but I actually do approve of that too. Well, of course, it has to be reciprocal. If we're going to be in a combined customs area, then they do have to collect our tariffs for us.
Right.
And, that, of course, illustrates the fact that what we've got here is not the last and best British offer. This is an opening position which is subject, potentially, to further concessions. And again, that's extremely worrying.
With the ones that they're negotiating with the EU
David,
at the moment.
Do you accept it would be as easy as that if we're going to be aligned with the EU on goods?
No, I think it's a huge problem, and indeed President Obama's chief trade advisor was actually interviewed this morning, in which he pointed out that UK signing up to the EU's common rule book would be a huge impediment to a trade deal with the United States, which is the principal prize, is the biggest market in the world, and we're in danger of not having that free trade deal, which I think is extremely worrying. And I think what appears to be proposed as a consequence of the Chequers Agreement may well be very contrary and inimical to our interests when it comes to doing a deal with the United States.
David, what do you think it's significant in terms of changing mutual recognition to the common rule book, which is basically EU rules?
I actually think that what is proposed there is a far more realistic proposition. It's very similar to the Canada proposal that I was talking about a few moments ago. And we know that that is something that the EU would accept. And I am extremely concerned that this document, which it would appear was ready to be printed very shortly before the Chequers agreement, has now apparently been junked. And I think that we do need to look at the details of that document very carefully and actually assess it and see whether that might not be more something that we would accept more than the document that is going to be published in the course of the next few minutes.